The young man seated across BK appeared unusually fragile, his thin frame, thick spectacles, and restless fingers betraying a fear that needed no introduction. And although Maya had quietly informed BK that the boy had lived with a congenital fluency disorder since birth and had struggled with stuttering all his life, BK had already understood what words failed to convey, acknowledging him with more than a gentle touch on his cheek before asking Maya to take him inside, a simple gesture that instinctively replaced fear with reassurance before the investigation resumed its course. With the room falling silent once again, BK's attention returned to the photographs spread across the table, and what until then had appeared to be scattered memories collected during the wandering life of an artist had suddenly begun arranging themselves into a pattern too precise to ignore, for every single image carried a date, every date led back to a murder, and every location returned to a crime scene that had already been investigated, leaving coincidence with very little room to survive. The investigation was quietly divided once again, with Maya, Rakesh and SD being asked to revisit every one of those locations, not merely to examine the scenes of occurrence, but to reconstruct each entire day from the first light of the morning until night had already settled over it. Because BK had begun to suspect that the answers they were searching for had never hidden themselves within the murders alone, but somewhere among the ordinary movements that had surrounded them and escaped everybody's attention. Outside the room, two young men waited patiently while the photographs that had found their way to BK's hand revealed journeys of their own, some preserved out of admiration for Angad's paintings, some exchanged over WhatsApp, others quietly surviving on Facebook, each one becoming an unnoticed witness to a story that none of those who had shared them could ever have imagined. BK arranged for them to be dropped home safely under Maya's care, but by the time she returned after seeing them off, he had already packed his belongings and was preparing to leave, offering neither explanation nor destination and leaving behind only one instruction that mattered: that Angad was to remain under constant watch, but under no circumstances should he become aware that he was being watched. BK's ticket confirmation arrived a few moments later, and before anyone could wonder where he was headed, BK had already left, reaching Chennai the following morning before continuing by road to Thanjavur, where an unremarkable hotel, a change into traditional Tamil veshti and a short journey into a nearby village allowed him to disappear into an identity that attracted no attention. While fluent Tamil, long conversations with elderly residents over cups of filtered coffee and patient listening yielded fragments of memories that had remained buried for years and would have remained so had someone not returned looking for them. By nightfall, he had quietly resumed his journey, reaching Thiruvananthapuram before dawn and flying onwards to Kozhikode, from where he travelled north towards Kannur, intending to continue his enquiries near the Devipuram Bhagavati temple. But somewhere near Payambalam beach, the relentless pace of the previous 2 days finally demanded a pause, and a modest sea-facing hotel became his temporary refuge while the investigation continued to move around him. The reports waiting on his phone spoke almost unanimously of the same Angad they all had come to know. A man habitually lost in the influence of hard drugs, drifting through his days in a haze that often left him speaking to people no one else could see, while the surveillance report submitted by Third Eye, despite observing him over extended periods, described no visible aggression, no quarrels, no confrontations, and no behavior that reflected the extraordinary violence with which the murders had been executed, presenting BK with two observations that appeared unwillingly to coexist, because the paintings continued drawing the investigation towards Angad, while the man himself seemed permanently detached from the very brutality the crimes demanded. The investigation nevertheless continued along the paths BK had assigned, with each member of the team quietly pursuing a different direction, and although SD's youth often led him towards possibilities others might have overlooked, BK had learned that even an improbable thought deserved to be examined before it was discarded. The first call he returned was Rakesh's. His enquiries at Raniganj had uncovered another unsettling coincidence. For the public still remembered Angad painting there on the very day a woman had been publicly humiliated at the same location. Although very few remembered seeing Angad after that, almost everyone remembered the painting, while before dawn, two notorious local goons had been murdered with a brutality that once again refused to distance itself from the artist's silent presence. Maya's findings only deepened the pattern. Her enquiries revealed that during the annual temple festival, Angad had been publicly insulted by the contractor's wife after being dismissed as a beggar. He later produced enough money to force the auction proceedings to be rescheduled before quietly completing a painting of a woman carrying a water pot, a detail that acquired disturbing significance when the murdered woman in that very case had been found with a water pot forming part of the scene of occurrence. While a second inquiry established that Angad had briefly been taken to the local police station on another occasion, he had been released almost immediately because everyone in the area knew him as a harmless addict who had caused no disturbance. By the time SD's call arrived later that evening, yet another observation had joined the growing list of coincidences. The weapons appearing in Angad's paintings bore an unmistakable resemblance to those used in the murders themselves, prompting the young investigator to consider someone might be reproducing what Angad had painted. But BK found himself returning to the same conclusion that had been gathering strength since the photographs first appeared before him. It was no longer the paintings that seemed to resemble the murders, but the murders had begun resembling the paintings.
Where stories begin.